back in the day, back in the day, we didn't have 401ks. We had pension plans. But now they got away with that because the corporations wanted more money, so they got rid of the pension plans. Now you're stuck with a 401k, which is subject to the markets. And who owns 80% of the stock markets? The 1%. So they're tying their wealth and greed to your ability to retire. It's sick. What if I told you that your parents or your grandparents are at even higher risk of being homeless? It's true. And it's quite unfortunate because in this capitalist system, we all know that our parents are just going through it, especially with the onset of inflation. What really is corporate greed that has been happening in this country. They didn't account for this when it comes to saving for retirement. And now you have a lot of our elderly in this country who we really should be taking better care of. And they are, for all intents and purposes, suffering. Many are becoming even more, they're losing even more as far as becoming homeless now. So I want to go into this story. Let me make sure I have it, because it was a story that I was watching in regards to retirement. Make sure I have it here. And I was listening to it. I was listening to it while I was doing my workout the other day, because it just attracted me, and it made me think about this. So we're going to take a look at this, and then we're also going to get more into the nuts and bolts of our elderly becoming homeless. So this says why the U.S. retirement system gets a C+ rating. So let's get into this.
U.S. Social Security is facing insolvency by 2033.
If that trust fund runs short, benefits would have to be cut by around 20%.
At the same time, the U.S. retirement system received a C+ rating from the Mercer CFA Institute Global Pension Index in 2024.
The Netherlands actually took the top seed again in 2024. Australia was number 6 in our survey, but it's a C+, but that puts us middle of the pack. It means that the system is solid, designed well, but there is a significant risk. And if we don't clear that risk up, the system could be in some jeopardy.
Americans save dramatically more than in other countries.
But
the 401k system won't work. If Gen Z has some money in a retirement account, I will guarantee you that most of that money will be leaked out before retirement to buy a healthcare policy, to deal with an emergency room, to maybe buy a house, which is good, but that money won't be there for retirement, or all the other kind of life contingencies that happen, over that 40 years that you're working.
So here, it's just in the intro, they're saying that we save more, right? But who got money in their savings? Who got money? By the way, take the poll, please. Take the poll, because who got money in their savings? Those of us who are millennials, I'm curious. Y'all got a savings account? What is a savings? Because I guarantee you, baby, a lot of us ain't got diddly squat in that savings account. Because when you're living paycheck to paycheck, you have no savings, because that savings gets depleted. You take money out of your savings, and guess what? Your savings goes back to zero. So when it comes to retirement, millennials, we're cooked. Also, are Gen X saving? Do they even have anything? Because after boomers, Gen X is next. And Gen X is a smaller, I think Gen X is a smaller population. I don't know why. I feel like Gen X is a little bit smaller population than millennials. Let's continue on, guys.
Countries around the world are raising their retirement ages as well as requiring mandatory contributions into personal retirement savings. Experts suggest this can help address modern problems, like people living longer and fewer workers paying into the system. Here's how the US retirement system compares to the rest of the world, and what experts think it can do to improve. Let's consider some of the features that are often present in the A-grade systems. They are a net replacement rate, including both public and private pensions, of at least 65% for a median income earner with a full career. Private pension coverage of at least 80% of the working age population. Pension contributions that are being invested for the future of at least 12% of wages. And a well-governed and well-regulated private pension system.
I think is important to highlight the Netherlands, that's in the top all the time. They have just passed rules in the last couple of years. They're moving from a defined benefit arrangement to a defined contribution.
A defined contribution plan, such as a 401k in the United States, works a little bit like a bucket. Workers decide how much to put in, how to invest it, and in some cases, employers add to the bucket as well. In the United States, participation in these plans is voluntary, and workers typically must choose to opt in. Usually, they can access all of the money upon retirement. A defined benefit plan, however, resembles a faucet. Workers pay into programs such as Social Security or employer-sponsored pensions and receive a steady monthly payment upon retirement, typically for life. The benefit plan provider sets the contribution amount and how the money is invested.
In the Netherlands, there's a mandatory contribution made. You can't opt out of it, either as an employer or an employee. So getting money in the US is a real challenge because it is a voluntary system. But if we're going to stay voluntary, then getting it easier to launch a plan and join a plan is the critical thing for us to focus on.
So here's my question. Now hear me out. If housing was guaranteed, if healthcare was guaranteed, if transportation was free at the point of service, if utilities were free at the point of service, you follow me here? If, at the very least, if you couldn't afford food, you can get a stipend for healthy food, right? Just by being unemployed. Or if you're elderly, people would make sure that you have food continuously in your household. If all the basic necessities to live is provided for, when it comes to trying to save for retirement, the only thing you would really need is money for more recreational things that you want to do when you retire. I don't see the need to have a retirement if all your basic needs are already met. Retirement should be for just extras if you want to have that. I don't think we even should have to save for retirement like that. This is also one of the reasons why, and Roger, I know you're watching, we should have things like public banks so that we can have government subsidized housing for seniors. If you are a senior and you don't own your own home, then you should be able to get government subsidized housing for yourself. You should be able to get an apartment for you and your spouse or your significant other, and you guys can live in that. And then on top of it, we talked about this last week. Also, seniors should, if you do own your home, I personally think that once your house is completely paid off, then you should owe no more in property tax. If you, especially if you're a senior, if your house is completely paid off, no more property tax. Tax on what? Right? But I think that there should be a huge push to make sure we focus on taking care of our elderly, because they are the guides, they are the sages that could tell us how things were back then so that we could have a more personalized lesson of history taught to us. Like, the elderly should be revered in such a way where we make sure that we want them around as long as possible. I don't see why we have to have retirement like that. Maybe am I sounding illogical or too radical? Maybe, but I just feel like they shouldn't have to struggle to just try to get a retirement. And the retirement's really for what? Basic necessities in your elderly years. They should be provided anyway. Right? And am I crazy? They should just have it. Like, for instance, my mom is 74. She should have completely, free at the point of service housing, utilities, water. If she wants to go back to school and get educated in something, she could do that. I honestly think that, it's why not? There was a video. I'll try to find it. But it was a video out of China and how they are providing college for elderly. No kidding. It is amazing. But I'll find it and we'll show that as well. But let's continue on.
The Netherlands is not alone in requiring people to save.
I've worked in a number of countries, including Chile and Australia. Both of those have national mandatory defined contribution plans. Both of the systems, I think, have worked fairly well in being able to help people get in early, invest, and save toward retirement.
The thing that I like about Australia is that everyone's covered. It's hard to beat the everyone's covered provisions. They shifted from largely a defined benefit system to a defined contribution years ago. And so when they did that, the employers were happy to go to a defined contribution. And so the fact that they had mandatory contributions, and the way they did it actually was slow. They started out at a low mandatory employer contribution, and then they've risen over time.
Not everyone agrees with the Mercer CFA assessment.
Mercer is a pension consultant firm. They care about these little details of how retirement plans work. For instance, they penalize the US because you're not required to buy an annuity with your retirement savings. They penalize the US because we allow pre-retirement withdrawals and loans. All of that is fine. What they don't account for is Americans save dramatically more for retirement than do people in the typical developed country. Retirement plan assets in the US are 2.5 times the median of OECD countries, which means even if we have these picayune faults with our program, we're saving much, much more for retirement.
Hang on. I want to say this because there's something that they're dancing around, but they just have not hit it, and they don't hit it in this video. Things are way more expensive than anticipated, so therefore elderly people are depleting their retirement funds a lot faster and in greater amounts than they actually anticipated they would. Therefore, the retirement doesn't go far enough. Why? Because the corporate parasites, the parasite class, are so greedy that they are literally depleting the retirements of boomers now, to the point where a lot of them are now starting to struggle and become homeless. Some of them are trying to go back to work at their 70s and 80 years of life, and they can barely survive. And so this is where we're at now, where retirement is now going to be seen as a distant memory. Because what do when, let's say, you set out to retire and you gain a 401k, and by the time you retire, it's like $2 million, right? $2 million. And you're 65. So you retire with $2 million in the account. In order to live a somewhat, and let's say you own your home, right, in the United States. You still have to pay utilities. You still have to pay property taxes, right? You still have to pay for food. You still have to pay for transportation, fuel, you still have to pay for a lot of these things, right? Will that money still be there between 65 and 90? Is 25 years. Is that 25 years going to, is that $2 million enough to cover you for 25 years? Because how many of us wish we had the cost of living that we had back in 2000? You remember how much a dozen eggs was back in 2000? Dozen eggs was what? I think on the high side, it was like $1.20. For like a dozen eggs back in 2000. It may have been cheaper than that. You might have been able to get 99 cents for a dozen eggs in 2000. But see how our money went? And our money actually went longer. Yeah, we made less, but our money also went longer. Right? I'm just doing the math pretty quick. So $2 million for 25 years is $80,000, right? $80,000 a year works right now. Right now, it works. And it might work until about 2035. But then it's probably going to go up to about $90,000 to $100,000. You'll need to actually have a decent standard of living. Right? Are you going to be able to do that? And how many people have saved that much? How many people have $2 million in their retirement account now? How many boomers that are just now, actually, it's not even boomers. Wait, when is boomer in? I think it was 1965, right? Boomers are basically up until 1965. So 1965, that would make you Wow. That'll make you 60 years old now. If you were born in 65. That means in 5 years, by 2030, you'll be retirement age. That means that's Gen X. How many Gen Xers that'll be hitting 65 by 2030 will have $2 million in retirement ready to go the moment they retire? How many of them? I'm very doubtful that there's going to be a lot. Have you tried to live off $40,000 a year in this economy? That's if you have $1 million in retirement. And if you expect to live to 90, let's just say 20 years, if you expect to live till 85. And so the problem is that a lot of people aren't able to save for retirement because inflation, or really in reality, corporate greed is depleting their funds.
Other experts argue just looking at averages can be misleading.
The median level of retirement savings for baby boomers is 0, meaning most people have nothing. And if you just take the average, you take in the people who have a couple of $1 million. So we have the boomers moving into retirement, 5% have the amount of money they need.
For the US system, the thing that could change that grade significantly, the most important is actually coverage. Our 401k plans are voluntary.
A 401k is a workplace retirement savings plan in the US that allows employees to set aside part of their paycheck into accounts that are invested in assets such as stocks and bonds.
Hang on. Did you guys catch that she said only 5% of boomers have what they need for retirement? Y'all catch that? 5%. That means 95% of baby boomers do not have enough for retirement. That is scary. 95% of baby boomers do not have enough for retirement. And by the way, back in the day, we didn't have 401ks. We had pension plans. But now they got away with that because the corporations wanted more money, so they got rid of the pension plans. Now you're stuck with a 401k, which is subject to the markets. And who owns 80% of the stock markets? The 1%. So they're tying their wealth and greed to your ability to retire. It's sick. And so I wanted to share that because this is what's going on with our elderly. And more of our elderly now, more than ever, are becoming homeless because even if they save for retirement, they just don't have it. And then how many people are going to hire somebody who's above the age of 65? How many? They're not going to hire somebody like that. They're going to hire somebody that's younger. So let's get into this. This is Invisible People, and they focus a lot on the unhoused. So it says the effect of homelessness on elderly people. All right. So let's get into this. It says, how does homelessness impact seniors? It says homelessness is always traumatic, but for older adults, the physical and emotional toll of aging magnifies the challenges of life without stable shelter. Aging is something we all face. One day, we'll each need a helping hand, someone to show us grace when we fall behind on bills, help us navigate stairs, carry our groceries, or patiently explain a confusing medical bill. But for too many seniors, that day comes without a home to fall back on. A single crisis, job loss, serious illness, or death of a spouse can spiral into homelessness later in life. And once someone becomes homeless in old age, the path to recovery is steep and often impassable. Older adults experiencing homelessness face disproportionately high rates of chronic health conditions like diabetes and hypertension. Preventative care is often out of reach due to lack of insurance or money. When conditions go undiagnosed and untreated, they worsen. Physical stress from sleeping on the streets or in cars raises cortisol levels, blood pressures, and emotional distress. The effects are cumulative and deadly. So, and what are some of these things that pay for these services? Retirement accounts. And if you can't save enough for retirement, then guess what? You're subject to this. And this is why homelessness is going up. It is bad. And this is why mama, daddy, grandma, pop, they are suffering under this system. It's not just us, those are in our working ages. It is also our parents and grandparents, and maybe even great grandparents for some of you who are younger, that are you have those families that are suffering because they just don't have it. Why? Because the conditions are unsustainable. It says hunger and health go hand in hand. Nutrition is another barrier. Food insecurity often forces older homeless individuals to rely on low-cost, low-nutrient options high in sugar, salt, and fat. Access to fresh produce and lean proteins is rare. While food banks and donations are well-meaning, meals are often canned or processed. That's why it's vital for meal programs and shelters to prioritize fresh, nutrient-dense foods. Barriers to care and connection. Trust in healthcare providers can also be an issue. Many older people feel unheard or overlooked during appointments, which leads to reluctance in seeking care. Physical limitations can make traveling to appointments or navigating public assistance programs nearly impossible. And once inside, long and complicated application processes can discourage even the most determined. Let's break this down. So, would we have this problem if we had a nationalized healthcare system? No, we wouldn't. We would not have this problem if we had a nationalized healthcare system. All right, let's break it down even further. Many older people feel unheard or overlooked during appointments, which leads to reluctance in seeking care. Some of these places operate as for-profit. So therefore, if you have a for-profit hospital, clinic, dialysis center, you have a for-profit, physical therapy, all these different places. If you have a for-profit, and guess what? Time is money. They're not going to have time to listen to you. They're not going to have time to take time in order to hear you out and help you to understand. This is why a for-profit healthcare system is not conducive for human survival. Right? Let's look at this. Physical limitations can make traveling to appointments and navigating public assistance programs nearly impossible. What did I say about public transportation? Free at the point of service? Did you know that ambulatory paratransit is also public transportation? Meaning that, for instance, paratransit programs, which I used for almost 18 years, is public transportation. But in order for me to be able to use it, I would have to come up with a copay to get to and from my treatments. Some older people, they ain't got it. They don't. And so that's what makes it tough too. And so to be able to get to where they need to go, who's going to take them? Some people don't have transportation, or some people may not have the time. And then says, and once inside, long and complicated application processes can discourage even the most determined. You know what makes the application process even more arduous? Having to figure out the insurance process. And if we had a nationalized healthcare system, there would be no insurance. Therefore, just like what John Q said in the movie, sick, help. Sick, help. There wouldn't be a barrier. They wouldn't have to try to figure out, oh, how are you going to pay for this? Because it's already done. All they would need is your ID. There wouldn't be a need for trying to figure out insurance information. And this is some of the ways in which we could actually alleviate that, but we don't. Let's continue on here. It says self-care and hygiene also suffer increasing risk of infections. Social isolation and the daily grind of survival take a toll on mental health, and the long-term impact is sobering. Homelessness accelerates aging. The average age of death for a homeless person in the United States is around 50, decades earlier than the general population. Homeless people are also 16 times more likely to die suddenly of a heart attack. These are not just statistics, they're warnings, and any one of us can face homelessness and later in life. Preventing senior homelessness requires more than housing. It requires dignity, compassion, and a community willing to care for those aging without a safety net. And then this gets into the social relationships and then safety nets. But this is one of the things as to why it is so important that we need to take care of our elderly. Because you, if you're lucky, will make it to being elderly too. Because either one or two things is going to happen, baby. Either you're going to become elderly or you're going to die. One or two is going to happen. I'd rather you become elderly, but while becoming elderly, you also have a life of dignity set up in place for you to age gracefully. But this system doesn't want you to do that because to them, your value goes down. So therefore, you're considered less valuable the older you are. I want to share something with you guys too as well. And this is out of Market Watch. More baby boomers are becoming homeless. It just takes one crisis to push someone onto the streets. This was 2 years ago. I remember talking about this, and it's happening. Are you kidding me? Did they paywall me? Oh, Jesus. All right. Thank goodness there are workarounds for this. My apologies, folks. I got paywalled. Okay. Got it here. And please make sure to take the poll. All right. So it says people age 65 and older are the fastest growing group of people who are unhoused. People age 65 and older are fastest growing people who are homeless, and their ranks will peak by 2030 in 5 years. This daunting forecast comes amid escalating rents nationally, stubborn inflation, and potential recession that compounds woes for baby boomers who have minimal savings for retirement. Remember what I said, 95% of them do not have enough for retirement. It also comes as the traditional workplace pensions are increasingly rare, and workers must rely on the savings they have accumulated through their working lives. About 27% of people who are 59 or older have no retirement savings. So over a quarter of people who are over the age of 59 have none. They ain't got nothing. According to a 2019 study by the University of Pennsylvania and others that analyzed the populations of homeless shelters in New York City, Los Angeles, and Boston, that predicted by 2030 the number of people 65 and older who are unhoused will nearly triple compared to 2017. University of Pennsylvania professor Dennis Colhane says the significant growth, especially in those 65 and over, will continue nationwide through 2030. So it just takes one crisis to push someone who is rent burdened into the streets. Many older homeless adults are newly unhoused. And so Margaret Cushnell, the director of University of California, San Francisco Center for Vulnerable Populations, said nearly half of single adults 50 and over are experiencing homelessness and have never been unhoused from before age 50. First, being homeless after 50 looks very different than lifelong homelessness. It's hard in your 50s and 60s getting back into the workforce anyway. But add in that these are low-wage, physically demanding jobs, often that these people had, and they can't physically do anymore. Says those who are first homeless after 50 tend to stay unhoused until, and they tend to die faster than those who have experienced homelessness throughout their lives. Says that homeless seniors often use acute healthcare services and die prematurely. Homeless seniors often use costly acute healthcare services and die prematurely. The Journal of the American Medical Association study found unhoused people over 50 years died at a rate of 3.5 times greater than their housed counterparts. According to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, there are only 36 affordable and available rental homes for every 100 extremely low income renter households nationally. It says homelessness service groups are maxed out in their ability to help those homeless after 50 and may not have the substance use or mental health programs or of other adults who may get services faster because of other issues. These are older neighbors and caregivers and preschool teachers and landscapers who have exhausted their ability to work. They're at risk. It's important we not distance ourselves from people who contributed to and built our communities, and now they need help to stay in that community. We are all aging. And it's just like what I talked about before. The homelessness population in Orlando has jumped in 3 years. And by jump, that's an understatement. It has increased 156% since 2022. 156% increase in homelessness. How many of those are seniors? How many of those are your mama, your daddy, your grandma, your grandpa? How many of them? And this is why the system needs to change. Imagine your mom or your dad out there in the streets. Imagine your grandma, your grandpa out in these streets. People passing them by as if they're invisible. Their bodies slowly deteriorating and withering away because they don't have enough nutrition. They have no place to stay away from the elements. Their health is fading fast because as soon as they go into a hospital, they just want to treat them for whatever slight thing that they may have and then put them back out in the street. We need a system of dignity, a system of grace. Problem is, we don't have it because that system has to be built by us. We can't wait for another group of people to do it. Can't wait even for politicians to do it. I want to give a shout out to Roger Meadows for this because he sent me this as well. I just want to take a look at this. As map U.S. poverty rates by state, poverty rates, a 3-year average. This is from 2021 to 2023. I live in Florida, so let's take a look here. So it goes from 6% to 20%. In Florida, it is 12.5% right now. Highest is Louisiana with 18.9%, and in New Mexico is 18.5%. Washington, D.C. is 13.4%. The lowest is actually Utah. And look at Vermont with 7.7. So this is how bad it is. Number of people in poverty. Just look at these numbers. Louisiana is the top with 853,000 people living in poverty. New Mexico, 388,000. Mississippi, 501,000. Arkansas is 473,000. Kentucky is 699,000. So if you look at it, there's millions of us. So many more living in poverty than there are people who are wealthy. And so I think it's important that we focus on changing the system, not just for our young people, but we also have to keep our older people in mind. Because we want those golden years to be golden. And we don't want them to see them miss out. Because we want that to happen to us. Let's take care of our elderly. All right, thank you very much. Go ahead and give a like to the stream. I'm going to check. And Roger, I saw your super chat. I will check the DM. Let me check right now see if we have any Rumble rants. No. Okay. Okay, I do see a comment in Rockman, but you probably have a lot more than that. Okay. Let's do this. And hold on. I was going to be looking for this particular video I saw. I don't know if I wanted to share it on here, but for the stream, but I don't know if I'll be able to. But there was a video that I saw that I thought was amazing. And if I can find it really quickly, then I will share it. I wonder. Man. It was a really good one. And it basically shows like real dignity being done for the elderly. And it's something that I would love to see more of, especially if we can have that in this country. Oh man. Let me see. And then if not, it's okay. I'll see if I can find it and retweet it. I think it was shared either by Carl Jha or Jason Smith. It was one of them that shared it. It was awesome. I don't think I'll be able to find it. I'm sorry, guys. It was such a good one. Oh well. But I'll make sure to share it on Twitter if you guys follow me on Twitter. I'm gonna look for it because I really want you guys to see it. Anywho. All right, so let me go into that. Let me just check here. Okay. So thank you very much for this, Roger. I'll just share this really quick. This is our U.S. News and World Report. These are the 10 states with the most homeless people. You have California, New York, Washington, Florida's number 4. Massachusetts, where Sabby is number 5. Then Texas, Illinois, Oregon, Colorado, and Arizona. It says California alone counted for 24% of all homelessness in America, based on the 2024 estimates, yet standardized by population. The states with the highest rates of homelessness were Hawaii, New York, Oregon, Vermont, Washington, D.C. had the same rate as Hawaii and New York. Yeah, so it's bad out there. It's let me see here. Yeah, I gotta get going. I'm running long. Says let me see.
Canadians in 2024. So
says California, New York, and Florida consistent rankly among those states with the highest raw numbers of homeless people. According to the 2024 and 2025 estimates, California had the largest population with 1,080. I'm sorry. Read James, 187,084, followed by New York with 158,019, and Florida with 31,362. These figures represent the total number of individuals experiencing homelessness, with factors like high housing costs and these more populous states contributing to large populations. Here's a breakdown of states with the highest numbers. So you have California, New York, Florida, Washington, and Massachusetts. California and New York are, 187,000 and 158,000 respectively. Florida is 31,000, over 31,000. Washington is over 31,000, and Massachusetts 29,000, over 29,000. High population, high housing costs. The states with higher populations and more expensive housing markets, like California and New York, tend to have higher absolute numbers of homeless people. The complex causes are, while housing affordability is a major factor, other complex issues like substance abuse and health problems also contribute to homelessness in these states. And the regional impact is these states account for a significant portion of the total homeless population in the U.S., with over 315,000 people experiencing homelessness across 3 states combined. That's a lot, Roger. That is crazy, man. And yeah, Florida is number 3 on the list. And says there isn't a precise number for just empty condos, but Florida has over 1.6 million vacant housing units overall, the highest in the nation, a figure that includes condos. Factors contributing to this include investor activity and significant real estate appreciation. More recently, new condo safety laws requiring mostly repairs are forcing many owners to sell, increasing inventory and potentially contributing to a rise in vacant condos. So Florida has the most vacant houses in the U.S. with 1.7 million. Let me see, speculator activity. A significant number of these vacant properties are owned by domestic and international investors and speculators who buy homes and condos to profit from appreciation. Increased supply of condos. A spike in condo inventory is occurring due to new state laws. And after 2021 Surfside collapse, which mandate safety inspections and costly renovations for buildings over 30 years old. I think I remember that. I think that was in Miami. It's like half the building collapsed. Market impact says the increased supply, along with cautious buyers concerned about raising HOA fees and building costs, is creating surplus condos on the market. Yeah, fuck HOAs. Oh my gosh, I cannot stand them. It says new study found that 1.7 million homes vacant in Florida. So what I'll do is I'll take a look at that. And yeah, I could definitely talk about that, about what's happening in Florida. And he says, James, I thought that was just me. You just revealed the scientific explanation as to why 2I would go to bed late in high school and couldn't fall asleep. I was a CD student, maybe B. Why? Because of sleep deprivity. As we went up in grades, we had to get up earlier and earlier. And first through fourth grade, 8 a.m., fifth grade, 7:30 a.m., sixth grade, 7 a.m., junior high school, 6:30 a.m. By the time we got to high school, we had to be up at 6 a.m. Now, here's the thing, Roger, as far as having to go to school earlier. So here's the thing. There was a book that I was reading, and it's quite interesting. It's called The Power of When. I forget the name of the author, but he actually is a sleep study specialist. And one of the things that he talked about is when you go through puberty, your circadian rhythm actually shifts when your hormones change as your body's developing. And so this is why a lot of teenagers actually end up sleeping in later, because they actually go to sleep later and they wake up later because their circadian rhythm and going through puberty is changing their bodies. And so they may when they used to go to bed at like 10, maybe 11, now they're staying up till like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. But they're waking up on the weekends at like 11, maybe 12, right? They're not waking up early like they used to because that circadian rhythm. So it may not necessarily be the amount of sleep that they're getting, but just when they're getting it. So it just shifts. So they still may be getting that 8 hours naturally, but it shifts from being earlier times to later times. The problem is that we know this, but yet the school systems do not acclimate according to the biology, typically, of teenagers. So therefore, and that's because they want them to condition them to be good little workers instead of being critical thinkers. And so because of that, then you have a whole bunch of sleep deprived kids in school. I guarantee you, GPAs would actually uptick a little bit if we actually change school times to accommodate the circadian rhythms of students. In fact, I think the earliest students should be elementary school. Then after them, middle school. Then the latest one should be high school. It should go in that order because it literally goes according to the natural circadian rhythm of them. Because look, my nephew, if you gave him the ability, by the time he hit 13, 14, if you gave him the ability to sleep until 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he would. But then you could wake up. I could go to bed at like 10 p.m. I could wake up at 2 a.m. Homeboy's still up. And it's not because he's being defiant. It's because biologically his body's changing, so he has to be up. And so instead of punishing or yelling at them, realize that their body's changing in that way. And so schools should acclimate to that too. But they don't. Right? But yeah, it's crazy, man. So it wasn't you, it was the system. You said, I stopped eating breakfast when I got to junior high. And yeah, and some people they stop. And sometimes it's because like you don't have time to really, eat breakfast. And so you skip and then you start getting used to it. Oh, this should be interesting. You already caught me with the first sentence. I think I'm going to like this one. He says, here's another reason why 401k is a scam. Understand its origins. Hang on. Just making sure. Zoya, if you're listening, are we meeting today? I just want to make sure. Because I just looked at the time. It says it has a way for the boss class to get out from under having to be responsible for your pension. the way companies used to get around it is that they would file for bankruptcy, change their name, or merge or whatever. That would happen is the federal government via the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation, PBGC, will come in and pick up what's owed to retirees for what the corporations, if they want out of business or whatever the case is at the time. 401k came out to shift the burden away from employers and attach it to stock market. To say they went to stock market does well, your pension is going to improve. That was right before they started deregulating the predatory speculative economy. Remember Enron? Yep. When all those people lost their 401k retirement, yes, Gen X gets overlooked because there are less of us than boomers and millennials. Yep, I was right. He says, I just got a new job where I'm in the middle of my third worker. This after I get out of debt with my landlord, who I'm behind a year in back rent, and with the person who I rent this car from. And once I get out of all this other debt that I owe, I should be able to start next year, hopefully with a hope and a prayer and fingers crossed, we'll be able to start saving $500 weekly minimum. I'm hoping for you, Roger. I'm pulling for you, man, because you've been through it. You have really been through it. It says remove housing from predatory speculative marketing, decommodifying it. It says I'm doing a speech to text, so-called typos, single payer healthcare. The problem, when I want you to understand, James, is that the reason why the government does not want to do it is because it's really a shifting of the cost from individuals to the government. And once the government has the responsibility of covering everybody, figure out how to do it. This is the reason why I say it can't just be single payer healthcare, but also has to be removing hospitals, dialysis centers, rehab centers, nursing homes, and other type of medical facility from the predatory speculative market, and create a research and development state agency to discover new pharmaceuticals that can compete with the industry at a lower price, open to delving into alternative medicine as well. Remove private health insurance from the speculative market. These things open to door to single payer healthcare being the next thing. By the way, I see the reason for Florida homeless rates and all this stuff as it pertains to Florida today. That's the stuff I was talking about for Tuesday. Oh, okay. Those videos in regards to your governor, you can say for Tuesday's show. I got fired from a lot of jobs in my late teens and early mid-20s because of that same reason. Okay. So I have to get going. And let me check to see if there's any see, Origami says, when are we going to admit that we are a colony of Israel? The thing is, we're not a colony of Israel. And Israel is really just a U.S. military outpost. But in reality, it's not that Israel controls the United States, and it's not that the United States controls Israel. It's that the parasite class controls both. The thing is like the parasite class needs Israel because of the resources that is surrounding it. And then the United States, in the corporate parasites, need the United States in order to inject this hegemony across the world, because that hegemony involves the power of the corporate autocracy to basically dominate over the world, thus making everybody its slaves. So yeah. Yes, I am tired. I worked out earlier today, and I had to rush to make sure I was on time for the show, which I was not. So yeah. And then Roger says, crazy what's happening in Florida with the housing market. Absolutely. Thank you for this. And he says, my rock ain't going through. Check DM. Thank you so very much. And then this last one, Truth Sensei says, SMUD Freedom Flotilla Convoy set sail earlier today. All eyes on Samud. Crew includes Greta Thunberg and Greg Stoker. Oh, Greg's on there? Oh, snap. Okay, that's going to be interesting. Oh, my gosh. Okay. And Roger, I'm sorry. I can't I don't have time to go into the sorry. I don't have time to go into this one at this video that you sent on Rockfin. My apologies. I am running very late. I'm supposed to be at a meeting right now. But guys, I will see you guys on Tuesday. I don't think I'll just be doing a quick I'll be doing some news stories on Tuesday, so you guys can be prepared for that. And so, guys, thank you so very much for tuning in. Water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Do all the things if you got them. Love you guys for watching. Forehead kisses. I'll see you guys in the next. Oh, wait. I forgot the poll. Sorry. Let me see the poll. And let me share the screen before I go. Woo. So y'all gonna get a second set of forehead kisses for that one. All right. It says, are your parents struggling economically? 37% said yes. 36% said no. 22% said my parents aren't alive. And then 4% says I don't know, no contact. So that's out of 89 votes. So yeah, a lot of people have struggling economic parents that are struggling economically that are elderly. So it's a lot, man. Anyways, take care, everybody. Thank you so very much for watching. Second forehead kisses for you, because that's the kind of guy I am. Y'all have yourself a